them than the 3 minutes?
Yeah, we can ask all we want.
Okay, cool.
We're not
Okay.
open.
You got cut your way back out.
They can't.
Yeah, I was aware of that.
It's 6 p.m. on Monday, April the 13th, 2026, and I call this study session to order. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Would you please join me in the flag salute? And Councilmember Cedar, will you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and for the record, Councilmember Whalen is absent this evening. And for staff, we have Planning Manager Stallnecker, Public Works Director Madden, Finance Director Robeck, and Police Chief Fernandez. All right. First item on the agenda this evening is a presentation by Sound Transit.
Alrighty, thank you, Mayor White and council members. My name is Matthew Maurer. I am the Government and Community Relations Director for Pierce County for Sound Transit. I've met some of you in my previous role when I worked for the Port of Tacoma, but I've been here for about 5 months, and so I'm taking the opportunity to come and say hello to you. I gave a stack of cards to Angeli, and hoping she'll hand those out to you later so you have my direct contact information should you have any questions about this project or anything Sound Transit related. So with that being said, I'm going to real quick talk about our agenda that we have for you today. I'm going to real quick talk about the Enterprise Initiative. Some of you may have heard about the Sound Transit Board is undergoing because we've got some cost constraints that are currently in the news. Then my colleague Kathy Leota right here is going to go over the remainder of the agenda to talk about the Tacoma Dome Link extension and its impacts to the city of Milton, along with some station access and spring community engagement stuff, as well as any upcoming information for the project. And then we'll have a robust question and answer time as well if you guys have any. So real quick, I'll go straight into the Enterprise Initiative. Some of you may have heard we are facing a $34.5 billion what's the word I'm looking for, funding gap in between the dollars that we have coming in and the dollars that we have expected to pay out for all of the Sound Transit 3 projects. The Enterprise Initiative is an effort to deliver the greatest benefits to Sound Transit 3 within the available financial structure. The board has so far found about $4 billion in some savings and some cost reallocation, and we have a little bit of a going next here. This is a really good visual to kind of understand the scope of the issue. And just like all of the other municipalities in the region, we've had some issues with inflation, cost overruns, labor, and so we've got a pretty major problem ahead of us. So everything that you see in that brown is what we don't expect to have the capacity to currently pay for. And so we are exploring lots of different options, mainly in that is readjusting our capital program. We've got a lot of other issues that we're working through, mainly internal. So last time we did this in 2021, does it just do that or did I do that? Okay. There we go. In 2021, when we did the realignment, it was mainly capital focused, but this one is going to be operations focused internally, as well as our finance and the capital program as well. Next step, the board is currently undergoing some internal research among themselves to figure out what they plan to do in the future and what adjustments to the Sound Transit 3 plan will be made. They're hoping to make those by the end of Q2 2026. In particular for Milton, none of the approaches that they're researching right now would affect the alignment coming through in its current form in the city of Milton. So there are some that you may have seen in the news where it's going to stop in Fife as opposed to Tacoma. That was obviously one of the options among many that were researched, but all of the options that are on the table as far as I am concerned and know would still go through the city of Milton as currently designed. Okay, so next up we'll go to Kathy with the TDLE update, and then we'll be here for questions as well. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have one other. Lauren Douglas is our planning manager for the Tacoma Dome Link project, and she's our phone a friend as if Kathy or I don't have an answer to one of your questions. So go ahead.
Okay, wait time. Hey, it's good to be back here. I think I was here last time about a little more than a year ago after we released our draft EIS, and I know some new council members here, but I'm really happy to be back to provide you an update at this time. Okay, yes, thank you. So here's a refresher. This is our project overview. This new extension would begin from the downtown Federal Way station, which just opened up a few months ago. And it's the green line shown in this map. It would extend all the way down to Tacoma. It's 8.5 mile extension, 4 stations, 1 in South Federal Way, Fife, and 2 in Tacoma. From where we are right now, Fife would be the closest station. Forecasted service date is 2035 with parking at the Fife station and South Federal Way station projected to be in 2038. We're currently in the environmental review phase and advancing the design. So when it's all built, the light rail from the Fife station to SeaTac Airport would be 27 minutes. And the really nice thing about that is it doesn't matter what's happening on I-5, how bad congestion is, it's always going to be 27 minutes. And of course, residents of Milton are not going to want to just go to the airport. They're going to want to go to Tacoma, to South. They're going to want to go to all the way to Linwood, Bellevue, Redmond. All of that will be available to your residents, and eventually all the way to Everett, all the way to Ballard, West Seattle, and Issaquah as well. One note, the shaded brown section on this map represents the boundary of the Puyallup tribe of Indians. This project also includes 2 stations on reservation land at Fife and Portland Avenue. Next slide, please. Okay, there we go.
It's got to be an internet lag, so.
Could be. Our overall project timeline. Well, you also have your handout here, so I'll just continue talking. Overall project timeline, we are in the planning phase, the tail end of the planning phase up at the top. Next year, we expect to enter into the final design phase and then in construction. So I mentioned we were last here after release of the draft EIS. Last year, after receiving public input on that, the board identified the preferred alternative, which was that green line that you saw on the map I just shared. Now we're in phase 3, which is final EIS and preliminary engineering. What we mean by preliminary engineering is we're advancing the design of the project from a 10% level of design to 30%, which certainly gives us more certainty on the project, but there's still quite a bit more design work that has to continue during the final design phase. So next year, we'll publish the final EIS. The board will select the project to be built, and then the FTA will issue a federal record of decision, and that federal record of decision concludes the NEPA-CEPA process with the FTA. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a little bit more on the current phase that we're in. I talked about advancing the design further to get more certainty on it. We're also, as part of completing the environmental review process, we're studying all the things. If you've had a chance to either create or review a draft EIS or final EIS, you know that there are many, many elements in the natural and built environment that the EIS studies and then identifies potential mitigation for. I'm just going to mention a couple of them right now. One is wetlands. Where we can't avoid impacting wetlands, we try to minimize the impact and then we mitigate the impacts that we do have. This is one of the topics of active discussion we're having with the city, including with the city's wetland consultant. Another factor that we look at in the EIS is noise. We look at something called sensitive noise receptors, which are schools, libraries, residences. And if it's determined that there are noise impacts to these sensitive residences, we mitigate that, typically for our light rail project by building about a 4-foot tall barrier on the side of the guideway of the light rail train. I'll talk a little bit about planning for construction, which is, we're definitely in the early phases of planning for construction, and we certainly don't have things figured out, but this is another topic of conversation that we're just about to launch with the city and with WashDOT as well. So our priorities as we plan for construction are to manage traffic during construction. We may need to look at implementing lane closures. Lane closures, the thought behind lane closures would be to try to get as much of this construction done within the existing right-of-way to reduce some of the impacts to the businesses on the side of SR 99 in this case. We also need to maintain emergency vehicle access at all times and maintain access to businesses and residents. Finally, communication with businesses and residents throughout the construction period, and a two-way communication, because we need to hear if there are things not going well or concerns. I did hand out this, it's a little 2-pager that describes in a lot more detail what businesses and residents can expect during construction. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a bit more about what's happening here in Milton as far as what we think is going to be the likely issues that will come up. So this map shows the preferred alignment in Milton. Just for context, the entire alignment for Tacoma Dome Link Extension, as I mentioned, is 8.5 miles. Through Milton, we're looking at about 1.5 of those 8.5 miles. So in this map, north is oriented to the left side of the page. That's where the Federal Way, the county border. So at that point, the alignment is transitioning from the west side of SR 99, crossing over SR 99 to then travel along the east side of 99. It stays on the east side quite close to Pacific Highway until about 400 feet south of Birch Street, where it then veers away from Pacific Highway to travel closer to I-5. This map also shows some of the wetlands and streams. It's obviously a challenging area, a very sensitive area for us to build our project through. And also shows we're begin looking at stormwater, our guideway. We will track some stormwater that we need to manage. In addition, the roadway improvements, multi-use path that we build, we need to deal with the stormwater that occur on these facilities. So in this area, the guideway is pretty consistently about an elevated guideway throughout this area, pretty consistently about 30 feet tall, and the guideway itself is about 30 feet wide as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the second half of the corridor in Milton. So on the north side of it, the guideway, again, still elevated, about 30 feet over Porter Way. And then there's a short section where the guideway transitions to be on retained fill, which is kind of like the light rail being on top of a retaining wall, and then another short section where it's actually at grade. So it's at grade, that occurs at about where, if you know where the Telecare building is on Pacific Highway, that's short section where it's either retained fill or at grade. And then as it continues, it's elevated again to up to a higher level, 60 feet to get over the SR 167 interchange. So when it's at grade, it's still completely separated from traffic, sidewalks, anything like that. It's just at grade, and there will be, if fencing is required to keep it secure in that area, we'll provide whatever's needed to keep it safe and secure. Okay, next slide, please. So as far as what we're going to be building, this shows a typical cross-section of the design in Milton. Here you can see our guideway is on the east side of SR 99, and then between the guideway and the roadway is a shared use path that we'll be building and a planter strip. So one thing I want to note, we don't typically have fencing around our columns or under the guideway. There might only be occasions when we would have fencing, such as the example I mentioned, when it's at grade, if there's a safety issue. Next slide, please. This is a visualization, just to give you an example of what it may look like from the ground. This particular spot is just north of Milton, across from the Gethsemane Cemetery, but just to give you a flavor of what we'll be building. This one's on the west side. Obviously, in Milton, it will be on the east. Next slide, please. Okay, potential property effects. This is one of the toughest things, most difficult things for everyone, the community certainly. But right now we're in the phase of continuing to refine what the property will be needed to construct, operate, and maintain the system. And at the same time, we are working to try to reduce impacts wherever possible. When we came here to describe the draft EIS, at that time, the SR 99 West alignment, which is now the preferred alignment, was looking at about 11 business displacements and 14 residential displacements in Milton. The preferred alternative, which has refined the alignment to shift over to the east side of SR 99, a little further north than was originally indicated, avoids most of those residential displacements. So it's the Spring Valley Mobile Home Park and the Cedars RV Park that we are avoiding those displacements. So it's almost all of the residential displacements by shifting the alignment over to the east sooner. So right now we're looking at about the same number of business displacements, somewhat different businesses because we're on the east rather than the west, and many fewer residential displacements, looking at approximately 2. Okay, so following the record of decision that I mentioned, which would occur next year, then we can begin the formal process of acquiring properties needed for the project. So in some cases, it's also may involve a relocation. So that includes an appraisal of the property, negotiations with the property owner, and relocation assistance to businesses and residents displaced. So just a couple of examples, the types of relocation assistance we can provide includes advisory services to help identify alternative locations for these businesses and residents. We can also cover moving expenses for the relocation. For businesses that are relocating, we provide assistance with the startup costs of getting your business set up in the new location. So that's typically how it happens. Now, there are rare occasions when we can actually acquire a parcel before we have the record of decision. And it's quite rare, but there is an example underway right now, right here in Milton. There's a vacant parcel on Pacific Highway East that is kind of wedged in that area between Pacific Highway and I-5, vacant commercial property that has submitted permits to the city to develop that parcel. This is a parcel that any of the alternatives in the FEIS, we would need to acquire this parcel. So this is a case where we have begun requesting approval from the Federal Transit Administration and from the Sound Transit Board of Directors to acquire this parcel early so as to reduce the disruptions to everyone involved. You know, should they obtain the permits and build it, we would immediately acquire the parcel and relocate everyone. So it appears that this is going to be moving forward based on everything we can tell. And at next week's Sound Transit Board meeting, the board will have the opportunity to approve that early acquisition, which is pending FTA approval. We understand FTA will approve it. Their timeline it may take a little more time till they actually give us the approval. Okay. Next slide, please. Just thought I'd mention our ongoing collaboration with the City of Milton. So we have 2 agreements already with the City of Milton. We have a partnering agreement, which basically establishes how we want to work together. And then we also have a project administration agreement, which has task orders associated with it that provides the ability for the city to work with us. And for example, if they need to have a consultant provide some expertise on wetlands, it enables that to happen. We have standing bi-weekly coordination meetings with city staff. We cover all manner of topics from design revisions to environmental issues. We sometimes include WSDOT in those meetings because obviously WSDOT and City of Milton have some shared interests and responsibilities as regards to SR 99. In those meetings, we also discuss, what comments from the city on the draft EIS and how those will be documented in the final EIS. One of the big points of collaboration will come up in the next couple of months where we'll be sharing with the city and all the cities and partners along the corridor we call it our pre-final preliminary engineering design. And so this is probably the biggest review of this whole phase of the project that we'll be asking the city to carefully review our design, and this would be the time that the city can flag concerns that the city has with the design. And next slide, please. So I know that there's also interest in how are our residents going to get to these 2 stations. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So 2 stations nearest to Milton are the Fife and the South Federal Way stations. So from where we are right now, the future Fife station will be about 2 miles away, and the future South Federal Way station will be a little over 3 miles away. From the eastern edge of Milton, both of these stations are about 4 miles away. Now, I know this might not be fully satisfying to some residents of Milton who would like to have a station within the city itself, and I can appreciate that disappointment. One thing I'll mention is that other cities, let's say if you look at Tacoma, although they have 2 stations within the city of Tacoma, there are residents who live within the city of Tacoma who the closest light rail station to them is 7 or 8 miles. Same for Bellevue, Washington. There are several light rail stations in Bellevue, Washington, but there are people who live in Bellevue who the closest station to them is 8 miles away. So having 2 stations, a little less than that, I think is pretty good. It's not as good as, of course, as having a station even closer. Okay. Next slide, please. So, how will people get to the station? Some of the ways people will get to the station are included in our project, such as the shared use path along parts of SR 99 that I showed you with the cross section, and the parking provided at Fife and at the South Federal Way station. There are other project improvements that will be built by cities along the corridor through there's a fund that we have called the Non-Motorized station access allowance for the whole Tacoma Dome link extension project. It's $44 million, so all of the cities can submit, propose station access projects, and then the candidate projects will be screened and evaluated for potential funding. Again, they would be designed and built by the cities, but if they are awarded funding, we would contribute to pay for some of the project. And I will say that there are definitely are more candidate projects for this funding than there is funding available. So there will be a screening and evaluation process. Next slide, please. These station access allowance projects and the station area design will be the primary focus of our spring engagement effort coming up. We have in-person houses in May. The closest one to here is the May 18th open house at the Fife Community Center, and then we have an online engagement opportunity. And we hope you'll all come. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know you can't see this little map on this slide, but I hope maybe there'll be enough there to entice you to come to one of these open houses. What the map is showing, then you'll see it when you go to it, is all the candidate station access projects for the Fife station. The pink lines on the east side of the map are 2 candidate projects that the city of Milton would build, 511 and 512. Number 11 focuses on Pacific Highway, completing a gap in a shared use path on the east side and a new sidewalk on the west side. And number 12 would be sidewalk improvements on Porter Way. Okay.
You said these are projects the city would fund?
No, the city would design and build, and we would contribute to paying for it. I think generally there's an expectation that the city would pay for some of it, and we would pay for some of it. Yeah.
But this would not include the Half Street restoration and pedestrian build-out along the guideway itself?
Right, that's just included in the project itself.
Thank you.
And one thing to note about the timing of this, I'm not sure exactly what the agreement, so there will be agreements that will be developed once the candidate projects are selected, and they are selected by our board of directors. It's not staff who selects them. But there will also be an expectation, typically the expectation is that they will be built by the time the light rail opens, which would be 2035. So there's still plenty of time. We don't anticipate any board action on identifying these projects anytime soon. Okay, and next slide, please. Almost done here. Okay, so what have we got going on now and soon? We're doing an awful lot of field work, geotechnical explorations to help inform the design. That will continue. I mentioned the early property acquisition for that vacant parcel here in Milton. That is next week. We expect to have the preliminary engineering design, 30% design, complete by the end of the year, and to publish the final EIS early next year. And that is the end of our presentation. Tried to answer many of the questions that Anjali sent to us in advance, but we are, all three of us are here to respond to any of your questions.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Cedar.
Thanks. Thanks for being here. I think I'm a little confused on the impact of the enterprise aspect of the presentation because, maybe I'm just reading too much local news, but my understanding is that there's been consideration that this entire second half of the presentation is on the potential chopping block. Is that not accurate?
No, that is not accurate.
Okay.
So what you saw probably was a little bit sensationalized in my opinion, right? We've got one of the options that was being discussed was truncating the spine, right, from Tacoma all the way to Everett. We're stopping in Fife and in Everett stopping at Payne Field, not completing West Seattle, not completing Ballard, not completing Issaquah. But The only thing that was actually being considered in that approach or in that scenario was just completing this project all the way to Fife and not going across the river to Tacoma. Never was not completing the remainder or even completing anything from Federal Way South was not a part of the scenario or even being discussed.
Does that remain a potential option to stop at Fife versus crossing the river?
Technically, yes. So when the board went forward and asked staff to develop these approaches or scenarios, they said, this is our budget gap. Give us all the options of what it would take to fill that budget gap and make it deliverable in some way, shape, or form. That is what they received at their retreat a couple weeks ago. And so technically that is on the table. The board could obviously do things above and beyond what was in those approaches as well. It just would require a 2/3 vote. Anything that alters what was a part of the Sound Transit 3 package would require a board vote and a 2/3 majority to do that. And so technically, there's a lot of, anything is on the table. But for right now, the ones that they researched, it was stopping at Fife was as much as the TDLE team or TDLE project was truncated.
Well, I am sure if you have had any interaction with our colleague, Councilmember Walker in Tacoma,
Yeah.
I just want to echo, her strong opposition to that.
Yeah.
That will certainly be felt by Milton.
Yeah.
And I'll just say it on behalf of my constituents and Milton in general. We have contributed a ton of money, and I think we've been generally supportive of Sound Transit's approach. It would be an incredible disservice to the South Sound if this didn't complete to Tacoma. And to that extent, the vision of this has always been not just for Seattle commuters, but rather for regional connection. And not going to Tacoma would decimate the South Sound's regional connections. So I know you've heard that before, and I just want to echo that.
No, I
for now.
appreciate that. Yeah, the Pierce County delegation of the Sound Transit Board, which makes Christina Walker as a member of, is very staunchly advocating for their project, which is in this case Tacoma Dome Light Rail Extension. I will say that within each of those, the Sound Transit District, there are sub areas in each of them, right? So there's the Pierce sub area, Snohomish, and then King County has 3: North King County, which is Seattle, then you have East King and South King. And the way that it's been designed by the legislature and how it was formed is the tax dollars from those districts, for the vast majority of that, is paid for or pay for the projects within their district. There are things that are shared because it's for instance, like maintenance facilities that benefit the entire district are shared by multiple sub areas. But in this instance, the sub area of Pierce is paying for the vast majority of this project. And when you look at where the issues are in terms of the overcapacity in the dollars or the funding issue, the vast majority are those projects, unfortunately, in King County, not in Pierce.
I appreciate that. And just to clarify, because I hear you talking about different sub areas for the financial aspect of
Yeah.
it. But ST3 was approved by the voters writ large, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
I was just trying to illustrate that the TDLE project, in and of itself, is actually one of the most secure.
I
If
see
you
what
look
you're
at
saying.
it from the funding aspect, because when you look at the overall gulf of what it's going to cost and what we have coming in, TDLE is in a pretty relatively good position compared to the rest.
I appreciate that
Yeah.
clarification of what you're.
Yeah, sorry, I roundabout way to get to that, to say that. I think we're good.
Yes, Councilmember Mounts.
Just a curiosity, when we shifted the project from the west side to the east side, only 2 residents now are impacted on the east side, but the slide did not indicate how many businesses are impacted.
It's about the same as 11 businesses, the same as from the draft EIS is what we're looking at now. But I tell you, every day there's some little refinements. So it may change a little up, down. I can't predict at this point.
Councilmember Turnus.
So with the $34.5 billion shortfall, which you said you have $4 billion already coming in as well, how does that affect? Will it affect actually continuing construction, or will it halt construction? Will it move timelines or construction? How does that, that's a huge number. So
Yeah,
Just
it is a
wondering.
huge number. And unfortunately, I won't be able to answer that question until the board makes their decision. So potentially, there would be no impacts to this project in particular. The timeline stays the same, the construction timeline stays the same, and we move forward. There is still, of course, on the table, them changing that based off of what they decide and the negotiations between the board members. And so I would encourage anybody here, if you have opinions about this project in particular, to reach out. You have Christina Walker, council member from City of Tacoma, Ryan Mello, the executive, the mayor Roscoe from Fife, and then Hunter George, council member from Fircrest, or your delegation members from Pierce County. Because at the end of the day, it's a board decision on what they decide to do to try to fill this budget gap. But it could happen, but right now it's not. Yeah.
Great. I think anything that we can do to get less people off of the freeways onto transit system, I'm 100% for. Thank you.
100%. Thank you.
Councilmember Hall.
I'm concerned that while we're helping fund this, we can only go north if they do not open that up to through Pierce County. Also, Fife will get the brunt of people transitioning out of Fife, which is already at max in rush hour. So what do you use? Obviously, do you bus them? And how many miles would that be from Fife? What's the actual mileage of track?
From Fife to here or Fife to Tacoma?
Fife to Tacoma.
I'm not quite sure, actually. We'll have to get back on the exact mileage. But just to understand your point, I hear that, and I think a lot of folks in Pierce County hear that the idea of stopping in Fife is untenable to both the residents in Pierce County and also the jurisdictions along the way. I would encourage you to also share those with your Pierce County board members as well, and potentially all the board members. You could, as a council as well, express your dedication to this project, or your whatever your opinion is. That could also come to the Sound Transit Board as well, as something that I would consider doing, just to voice those concerns about the idea of even stopping at Fife.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Turnus.
So regarding the wetlands, as it states now, are they actually going to be building on the wetlands, or how are the wetlands being addressed?
Yeah, so we will be impacting some wetlands and wetland buffers, and we'll have to mitigate all of that. It's going to be a big effort. We've already started to talk to the city about it. We may need to reestablish new wetlands. We may enhance existing wetlands. It's going to be quite a process. But yeah.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Councilmember Roberts.
I had a question about the shared path. So is that going to be completed during the construction, or is that a future project down the road? For example, the Porter Way sidewalk portion?
Well, there's two different, the shared use path along SR 99 that we're building, that would be built as part of our project. If there is funding awarded to the sidewalk improvements on Porter Way, then that would be, the city would lead development of that project with some funding from Sound Transit. And I said, I think the timeline would be, we would work out an agreement, we would develop an agreement with the city with the goal or intention or commitment maybe to have that completed by the time the light rail opens. So everything would be built as part, but everything really should be built by the time the light rail begins service.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a
Yes.
couple questions? Is that all right?
Of course.
Okay. I heard you say that the TDLE, that 8.5 miles, you're not seeing a significant overage or increase in costs. And I find that interesting because the preferred alternative prior was along I-5 that had zero business and environmental impacts throughout the city of Milton.
Yeah, it was a relative number. So I think that, Lauren, if you wouldn't mind, the number, I think we're still, like, the project itself, when we're looking at long-term, is $1 billion. But Sound Transit, I mean, relative to our massive budget, it's the smallest gulf compared to the other projects. So it's still significant. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that we're fine and everything, and our project is completely under budget. It's not, but compared to the others, it is in the best shape. That's what I meant, sorry.
Very good. And no alternatives are being considered at this time for routes? SR 99 is where we're going?
So the board's identified the preferred alternative as being the route I shared today, and the FEIS will still consider the other alternatives. So it's possible that when the FEIS is complete, that the board could select a project to be built that differs from the preferred alternative. The preferred alternative was kind of a strong indication of where they're leaning, but it's not a firm decision until the board selects the project to be built.
Okay, perfect. And that opportunity for comment from council or the public will be when the final EIS is released?
Probably the best time to comment on the design, well, we're going to be sharing the 30% design with you, but if you're looking for comment on the project that the board selects as the project to be built, I would say, what would you say, Lauren, would be the best time? Maybe anytime. Yes.
Very good. I've already delivered our comments about our desire to go along the I-5 corridor. So I noticed on most of your maps that all of that area in Milton that will be impacted is identified within the Puyallup tribal boundary. When these parcels are acquired or when these businesses are relocated out of Milton, does Sound Transit have an obligation to deliver those projects or those properties back to tribal boundaries?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want council to have a full understanding of potential impacts for our community and tax base.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mounts.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, if the board does change the route back to the I-5, or once they do a final route selection, does that mean you have to start the EIS program or all over? Are you doing environmental impact statements for each route that's proposed?
The FEIS will cover the preferred alternative route and the other routes that were studied in the draft EIS, so it would be covered.
So it wouldn't cause a delay. And
Potentially, there could be some delay. I don't want to speculate too much, but we're not advancing design of the other alternatives, so it could be a little catch-up should the board make a radical change.
thank you. And I'd also like to follow up on the disposition of the property that's acquired for the project. Once the project is complete, does Sound Transit have the authority to turn around and sell that again? Do they maintain it? Can they use it for other projects like affordable housing? Can they negotiate staging areas for long-term truck driver parking or long-haul parking?
Yeah, I could tell you a little bit, and then if either of my colleagues want to chime in. So once let's say we acquired a full parcel for maybe construction staging. Now the project is built. We don't need the remainder of the parcel anymore. There are a couple of steps that Sound Transit might go through along the corridor as a whole, depending on the size of the parcel. There could be, we have a process where we do look to see if a parcel is appropriate for affordable housing. If it's big enough, there's certain other criteria that might apply. And then otherwise, we will sell the parcel for whatever remains that we don't need anymore.
And those funds can be used for any eligible purpose, or will some of that funding come back to the city or the jurisdiction that the sale of the property goes into?
Oh, do you want to? No, Yeah. No, so we will have purchased the property using Sound Transit money. So if we get funds back, no, we would not provide it to the city.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now moving on to our regular agenda, the first item on our regular agenda, item 4A, the budget position report through December 31st, 2025. And Finance Director Roback is going to be presenting this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll be presenting the fourth quarter 2025 report. We will be presenting the fourth quarter 2025 report, fund by fund as usual, but please let me know if you have any questions or need any additional information as we go along. So starting with the general fund on page 5, the general fund revenues look good at a little over $1 million above budgeted amounts. This is primarily due to taxes, which are about $782,000 above budgeted amounts, with sales taxes about $461,000 higher than expected, and property taxes about $214,000 higher than expected. Licenses and permits are about $112,000 above budgeted amounts as well, due to higher than anticipated building permit revenues as a result of a few large development projects. Fines and forfeitures and miscellaneous revenues are also above budgeted amounts. Fines and forfeitures are about $55,000 higher due to higher than expected traffic infraction penalties, and miscellaneous revenues are about $74,000 higher as a result of higher than expected investment interest. General fund expenditures look good as well, at about $447,000 below budgeted amounts, and nearly all categories under budget. Planning is about $172,000 below budgeted amounts, primarily due to lower than expected wages, benefits, and professional services. Mayor and executive offices is about $63,000 below budgeted amounts as a result of lower than expected wages and benefits. Park facilities is about $49,000 below budgeted amounts as a result of lower than expected wages and benefits as well. Legal services and recreational facilities are the only categories above budgeted amounts, both with relatively small variances. The general fund did show a loss in 2025, but still ended the year with a fund balance of about $5.3 million, which is higher than anticipated in the 2026 budget. Before I move on to the next fund, does anyone have any questions or need any additional information regarding the general fund? Okay. Moving on page 6, the Asset Replacement and Capital Reserve Fund. This fund looks good with revenues at about $22,000 above budgeted amounts as a result of higher than expected investment interests and sales of capital assets. Capital expenditures are for the purchase of 2 police vehicles. Moving on to page 7, the Street Fund. The Street Fund looks good with revenues above budgeted amounts by about $28,000, primarily due to increased licenses and permits as a result of increased street permit revenues. Expenditures are slightly below budgeted amounts. Moving on to page 8, the Rainy Day Fund. This fund looks good with revenues about $7,000 above budgeted amounts as a result of higher than expected investment interest. Expenditures in this fund must be approved by the City Council. On page 9, the Drug Seizure Fund. In this fund, expenditures are under budget and include the purchase of e-bikes for the police department. On the next page, page 10, the Criminal Justice Fund. In the Criminal Justice Fund, revenues are about $123,000 below budgeted amounts, primarily due to reduced interfund transfers. Expenditures, however, are below budgeted amounts as well. Total expenditures are about $383,000 below budgeted amounts, with law enforcement expenditures about $408,000 below budgeted amounts, primarily due to lower than expected wages and benefits. Capital expenditures are for the purchase of a radio and evidence room lockers. If no one has any questions, I'll move on to page 11, the Community Events Fund. In the Community Events Fund, revenues are below budgeted amounts. However, expenditures are below budgeted amounts as well. Expenditures are for the annual Milton Days, Craft Bazaar, and Santa Parade events. On the next page, page 12, the Automatic Traffic Safety Camera Fund. In this fund, revenues are significantly below budgeted amounts, as the fund's first revenues were received in December, but the 2025 budget anticipated 6 months of revenues. Due to this revenue shortfall, a transfer from the general fund was required to eliminate the fund's cash deficit. Revenues in 2026 are strong, with about $552,000 received through March. Expenditures in the fund reflect increases in contracts with the Milton Municipal Court Judge and the City of Puyallup for processing cases related to the new program, as well as payments to the contracted vendor. On the next page, page 13, actually page 13 and 14, the real estate excise tax funds. These funds look good, with revenues surpassing budgeted amounts by over $60,000 in each fund. Transfers are made from these funds to the Capital Improvement Fund for eligible projects. Moving on to page 15, the Traffic Impact Fee Fund looks good, with revenues surpassing budgeted amounts by about $479,000 due to a few large development payments. Transfers are made from this fund as well to the Capital Improvement Fund for eligible projects. On page 16, the Parks Impact Fee Fund. This fund looks good, with revenues exceeding budgeted amounts by about $19,000. Transfers are made from this fund to the Capital Improvement Fund for eligible projects as well. Next up is the Capital Improvement Fund on page 17. The Capital Improvement Fund looks good, with over $2.5 million in TIB grant revenues received for the SR 99 and Porter Way project. Larger expenditures in the fund include expenditures for the SR 99 and Porter Way intersection improvements, community park outdoor meeting venue, citywide parks improvements, and City Hall retrofit projects. On page 18, the Electric Utility Fund. The Electric Utility Fund looks good, with revenues over budget and expenditures under budget. Revenues are above budgeted amounts by about $259,000, primarily due to increased charges for services. Expenditures are below budgeted amounts by about $680,000, primarily due to decreased operation costs as a result of lower than expected wages, benefits, and electricity purchased from BPA. Administration costs are higher than budgeted amounts, primarily due to increased professional services related to the electric rate study. On page 19, the Electric Capital Fund. This fund looks good, with revenues about $66,000 above budgeted amounts as a result of higher than expected interest and interfund transfers. Larger expenditures in the fund include expenditures for the substation and distribution improvements and tree trimming projects. The Water Utility Fund on page 20. This fund looks good as well, with revenues over budget and expenditures under budget. Revenues are above budgeted amounts by about $542,000, primarily due to increased charges for services. Expenditures are below budgeted amounts by about $329,000, primarily due to decreased operations costs as a result of lower than expected wages and benefits. Water quality costs are higher than budgeted amounts, primarily due to higher than expected public utilities. On the next page, page 21, the Water Capital Improvement Fund looks good, with revenues about $72,000 above budgeted amounts as a result of higher than expected capital contributions or system development charges and interfund transfers. Larger expenditures in the fund include expenditures for the new deep well, Porter Way water main improvements, and miscellaneous well rehabilitation projects. On page 22, the Water Asset Replacement Fund looks good, with revenues about $23,000 above budgeted amounts as a result of higher than expected interfund transfers and interest. No expenditures were incurred during the year for this in this fund. The Stormwater Utility Fund on page 23. This fund looks good as well, with revenues over budget and expenditures under budget. Revenues are above budgeted amounts by about $194,000, primarily due to increased charges for services. Expenditures are below budgeted amounts by about $267,000, primarily due to decreased administration and operations cost as a result of lower than expected wages and benefits. On page 24, the Stormwater Capital Improvement Fund. In this fund, revenues are about $151,000 below budgeted amounts, primarily due to lower than expected intergovernmental revenues or grant funds. Expenditures, however, are below budgeted amounts as well. Larger expenditures in the fund include expenditures for the citywide ditch and culvert and invasive plant species removal projects. On the next page, page 25, the Stormwater Asset Replacement Fund looks good, with revenues about $7,000 above budgeted amounts as a result of higher than expected interfund transfers and interest. No expenditures were incurred during the year in this fund as well. The Electric Asset Replacement Fund on page 26. This fund looks good, with revenues about $18,000 above budgeted amounts as a result of higher than expected interfund transfers and interest. Capital expenditures are for the purchase of transformers. In the Vehicle Repair and Maintenance Fund on page 27, this fund looks good, with total expenditures below budgeted amounts. Capital expenditures are for the purchase of a vehicle lift and a fleet diagnostic system. Revenues in this fund are based on internal work orders, with other funds charged for services provided. And lastly, the Information Technology Fund on page 28. This fund looks good, with total expenditures below budgeted amounts. Capital expenditures are for cable installation. Revenues in this fund are based on cost allocations and posted to the fund in equal amounts each month. That's all I had for prepared comments. If anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Mounts.
So I'm just curious why the wages and benefits were so much lower than expected.
That's a great question. It seemed kind of like a recurring theme. The primary reason for that is that we do budget wages and benefits at the top step. So the wages are at the top step per the wage scale, and benefits are budgeted assuming that everyone is covering their full family. And in reality, we have vacant positions, sometimes for the whole year, sometimes for a portion of the year. And many employees don't have a full family that's covered or choose the opt-out provision, which is half the cost of what it would have been to cover. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is item 4B on page 29. And this is an Easy Fiber update, and Public Works Director Madden is going to enlighten us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight, joining me, I have Edward Abreu and Troy Brosman. Edward is the Pacific Northwest Regional SVP and General Manager, and Troy is the Construction Manager and Lead Inspector. Maybe that's a second duty, but for the City of Milton. So these two gentlemen are very well apprised of everything that is happening in the city. And they are who I have found progress in working with Easy Fiber. So I asked Edward to join us today and just give us a kind of a recap where they are as far as percentage complete. We can talk about how we are mitigating certain issues moving forward and prioritizing public safety. And he can go into next steps. They can also answer any question that you may have regarding fiber or this installation process.
Mayor White, City Council, thank you for having us here today. In terms of an update for the project, we've completed 2 segments so far. This coming week, we're going to be completing 2 more. We're in the final stages of splicing and testing to complete construction and actually schedule installations. By next week, we will have our 5th segment completed, at which point we'll be about 55% completed of our full project in the city of Milton. After that, we will only have
I didn't hear the percentage, I'm sorry.
55%. That's just a rough estimate. After that, we'll have about 4 more segments to complete. Based on the timeline, I estimate that we'll be done with those additional 4 segments and 100% completed by the summer. Right now, on the network, we have a little bit over 100 active customers that have subscribed to our service, signed up, and we also have another 21 pending installations, and that's just on the 2 segments in the city that we've completed construction. We've completed construction, meaning that those homes are serviceable. So if any one of those residents were to order service, they can get activated. Those 2 segments represent about 500 homes, and out of those 500, we already have over 100 of them that are active customers of ours. In terms of construction adjustments that we're making, I'll pass it on to Troy in terms of what we're doing with assigning of work and things like that. So,
Very glad to meet you. We know that we've had some shortfalls in the city. We have hit some utilities. That is definitely not our intention. We're trying to be as safe as we possibly can out there. And what we've done to mitigate that is to kind of slow things down a little bit. Sorry.
Can't hear.
Sorry, I'll get a little closer. What we're going to do is we're going to slow things down a little bit in the city. We're going to pull back on the construction crews. We're going to limit them to smaller areas so that we're not.
Yeah.
That's all right. So we're going to spread them or pull them into smaller areas so that they're not spread out so much. By doing this, we can keep a closer eye on them. We can make sure that our progress is steady, but we can complete things in a shorter period of time and not cause as much disruption to the homeowners, the residents, the property, the traffic. That's our goal, is to make your lives easier, not harder. So.
In addition to that, we've also stood up a weekly cadence with Dustin and his team to be able to identify any areas of concern week over week. Any immediate concerns that a specific resident may want to have addressed, whether is on restoration or any concern at all. We work very closely with Dustin on a week-over-week basis. We are also going to be providing Dustin's team a restoration schedule. We've heard, obviously, the voices of the community with restoration. Just so that everybody knows, sometimes restoration cannot be final restoration until we actually all the work is completed. Conduit is placed. We proof our conduit, make sure that structurally it's not compromised, so that we're able to pull the fiber through and finish the whole process. Once we finish that and start activating customers, we're able to complete final restoration. So being that we have 2 segments that are going to be releasing this week and a third following next week, which will make 5 areas of the city that will be completed, we're going to be providing this week a restoration schedule. Rainier Asphalt is a company that most folks know in the region. They do incredible work in terms of concrete panels and asphalt restoration. So they will be performing the work for our contractor. That schedule will be provided to Dustin in those areas. We actually did a walkthrough today of the first segment that we completed in the city of Milton with Val. It was completely satisfactory and it met the city standards, and we were able to close out that first permit today, and we look forward to continuing to close those other permits as the work is completed.
And I will say that the section that was closed out today is a small section on Taylor. Most of the concerns that we've had are around inadequate boxes that people are driving over, lids are breaking, or boxes that are filled with soil. That kind of falls outside of Public Works. That's the utilities infrastructure. And so, but we do have, Public Works has a vested interest in making sure that the quality of installation of the fiber meets industry standard. And we've looked at a couple of those boxes. I went out with Troy after last Monday, and they are pulling that box, they're upsizing it, they're improving the connections, making sure it has a gravel base. So those are the kind of things that Milton right now is going, I wouldn't say above and beyond, but we're a little outside of our normal scope of work, which is pavement restoration, softscape restoration, and then the most significant effort of work for our team is locates, which gets to the strikes that we've had in the city. Significant strike happened last Friday. Milton Way was closed for approximately 4 hours, and I feel our team and PD and fire all worked very well together, and Easy Fiber, to keep the scene isolated, evacuate where it was needed, and then detour cars around what is a difficult area to detour around. We don't have a lot of outside routes that are easy for people to detour between 23rd and 27th. So, but we did our best, and that locate on the gas line, what I have heard from the full investigation is that was outside of what it was not Easy Fiber's fault that it was hit. Could additional safety precautions been taken? Perhaps additional potholing, but when the mark was off, it was off over 3 feet, and so that is it's very difficult to pin on who's at fault. And I know we all want someone to be at fault, but I really want to give council the full picture of what is happening right now. And that's 20 miles of boring, tunneling under our streets. And it is a significant impact, and it's an impact that the city's never seen before. And so we are working with Easy on this restoration schedule. Our goal is to close the gap, not have things temporarily restored for a significant amount of time. Let's get the fiber in and let's work right behind them and restore. And that way, customers aren't left waiting, or residents aren't left waiting, wondering, are they ever going to come back and finish? So that's what we're doing to date, but we're happy to entertain or answer any questions, council or mayor, that you may have.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
I'm interested in what it's costing the city for this. I saw our guys up there Friday night. I saw them down on Juniper when the stop sign was knocked down. I see a lot of Dustin and his crew out working. And that's taking them away from what they normally do. And these guys should be able to have a weekend. I mean, they really should. Should be able to go home on Friday and not have to worry about something like that happening. So I appreciate that you say you are going to slow down. I'd like to see the traffic from you guys slow down a little bit, be a little bit more careful, be aware of kids getting off school buses, be aware of stop signs, because I see when your name's on the truck, we know who you are. And then we also know the contractors' trucks too. So, and I walk a lot. Just be very super safe because it's just not worth it. It really isn't.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And one of the things we're doing is, so we had 2 general contractors working in the city, and we feel that one has underperformed. We're removing that contractor out of the city. Dustin is aware of who that contractor is, and we're transitioning the work, allowing this contractor to finish what they've kind of started, buttoning that up, so making sure that it meets city standards, but transitioning the remainder of the work to the contractor who is meeting our standards and is proactive and communicative, communicates well, so that also we don't have work across the city, across 2 separate areas. We're going to, in our agreement with Dustin is to allow the work to happen in one area at a time. So that way you guys know exactly where we are, and, we're able to minimize the risk and not tax the resources of the city as much. I will say that if there ever comes a need where the city needs additional resources, Easy Fiber is willing to pick up the tab on that and be able to help out the Public Works team with contract work or anything that you guys need.
I appreciate that. One more thing. Our streets are old streets, and when you're cutting through, slicing through, are you going to fill in those cuts? Not
Yes.
just the hole, but
Yes.
the cuts to make sure that water doesn't go deep into the street? And
Yes, ma'am.
you are? Okay. Okay.
So
And then-
Troy, you can talk a little bit more about the restoration process with street cuts.
Yeah, the restoration process, we will follow the procedures and the standards that the city has set. So anytime that we do a cut on a street, we expand that cut to cover any trench that we've placed in the ground. That way, it stretches a little bit further across the open hole. It gives it more stability and a better seal.
One more question I've had from a residents. It looks like you've temporarily filled in sidewalks with asphalt.
Yes, temporary asphalt,
They're just temporary.
yes. So we're
One up on, I believe it's 23rd, is not very friendly for if somebody's got a wheelchair or a walker. It needs to be a little smoother. Just a suggestion.
Is that on 23rd and Milton Way?
I believe it's 23rd. It's either 23rd or 19th.
Okay.
I think it's 23rd. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Troy and I were chatting, and the areas that we're going to prioritize, obviously, with restoration starting Meridian, Milton Way, areas that are heavily populated with pedestrian traffic first, and then obviously working out towards the rest of the areas that work has been completed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further, yes, Councilmember Mounts.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I have a couple of questions. This is a very frustrating process, right? So I would like to know for the record, who is ultimately responsible for protecting the residents of the city of Milton during the construction and the installation? I know that some things fall outside of the purview of Public Works, mentioned utilities. It wasn't apparently Easy Fiber's fault that the gas line was cut. That was an incredible experience just from a citizen point of view. Of course, I live on 23rd. I know how to get home, but who protects the residents of Milton, Mayor?
I guess that would depend on what happens.
I mean, overall, the city, part of the city's responsibility is to look out for the constituents in the city, right? And I feel a lack of where do we go when things aren't going right? Because things aren't going right, and they continue to not go right. I'm very, very pleased to hear that you're not going to have multiple locations at the same time, because when I drive around, if I see the men working sign, I go the other way, and then I go the other way, and there's another men working sign. And it's extremely frustrating that we can't get around the construction. So thank you for limiting your construction. And I think I also heard you say that you're going to have weekly meetings. Was that something that you just mentioned?
Yeah.
Really want to know about those and how maybe some of these things can be addressed in those weekly meetings, because there's a lot of things that need to come up, and I don't want to use all of our time here tonight for that.
Yeah, in those weekly meetings, we discuss construction progress, safety concerns, issues with any crews that may have come up, and me and my team immediately address those.
So they're not public meetings? They're,
No.
okay. Can we have some public meetings? Is that a possibility where you'd be willing to, in this forum or in other, I don't know, maybe this is sufficient?
That meeting is meant more of a weekly check-in with the Public Works team to just provide feedback. If you'd like us to come back on a monthly basis like this and answer questions, I'm open to it. Yeah.
Thank you. And then my last question, I think. You mentioned that you have 100 customers. So are we all going through all of this for the sake of 100 customers? What was the preliminary cost-benefit analysis before Easy Fiber decided to even come to Milton?
So in the industry, 35% penetration, you can call it market dominance, right? And normally, a company does not get to that over 3 or 4 year span. They can get to 35%. What we found in the city of Milton is that your residents have an overwhelming demand for the product. At pre-sales, meaning that even before the network became available, we had most of the segments that we have engineered already at that 30 to 35% pre-sold. These are folks that already paid a deposit because they wanted the service. These 100 customers that I'm mentioning are only in the first 2 segments that we released. Once we finish the work in the other segments, those installations will be scheduled. So we have 100, a little bit over 100 actually. We have another 21 that are pending installation. So those are customers that will be installed over the next week or so. And then as we complete work in the subsequent segments, those installations will be scheduled. So it's a lot more than 100. It's quite a lot.
30% is what your target is.
And then just to address your question, who protects the residents? It's the city. That's what I and my team have been tasked with, and chief. We protect it through permits. We protect it through inspections. We protect the residents through weekly meetings that I have with Eddie and Troy. And those weekly meetings were developed after we had that water main break and that significant impact to the residents. We meet on a weekly basis now. We've created stop work orders multiple times when we've found an issue. And this is not a get out of jail free card for Easy, but those issues were with general contractors that are subcontractors of Easy. Ultimately, it's still Easy's responsibility to take ownership for that and correct it, which I think they're doing moving forward, because that contractor will no longer have segments assigned to them within the city. And then we have done Eddie agreed on after last Friday, even though it wasn't their fault that the gas line was hit, we put a moratorium on drilling for until Wednesday. And the reason is because we have our Public Safety Committee meeting coming up tomorrow, and that's an opportunity where we can do a full debrief with fire and police, and which I feel overall it went very well, but there's always areas for improvement.
And in addition to that, also agreed not to do any drilling every other Friday. Dustin advised me that the city's off as city employees, so understanding that that we won't have any of your staff available, we agreed every other Friday when the city's off for us not to do any drilling. We will only do, splicing, testing, things like that require no digging, no boring. And when the water strike happened, I know that it affected some businesses over on Milton Way. Uptown Coffee comes to mind. I'm a coffee lover, so it came to mind. They were very understanding, but they did say, hey, can you reimburse us for the loss of business that we have for those few hours that we didn't have water available? And I approved the reimbursement. So we work with the business community to make them whole. Those customers that brought up those concerns to us, we understand as a business ourselves how important small businesses are, and we made them, we reimbursed them and made them whole. The fiber, when we are done building our network, the fiber optic service will be available not only to all of your residents, but to the business community as well. So all of those businesses on Meridian and on Milton Way, the schools, your city buildings will be within the network, and you'll be able to order service if anyone wants it, so.
Can I follow up just real quick? And I want to thank you. I know the city is there for us. I see you there. And I don't understand the oversight that Easy Fiber has of the contractors and the subcontractors. I know that the city has our back ultimately, but it's creating a strain, I'm sure, on the city resources. And can you just tell us a little bit about the oversight that Easy Fiber has for the protection of the residents of Milton over your contractors and subcontractors?
Sure.
And I'm going to move that away.
Yeah, Easy Fiber has, not only myself as a construction manager, but we also have 7 inspectors throughout all of the cities where we're doing work. So I have one inspector here in Milton. He visits and talks to Val, inspector, every day. He's talked to Dustin off and on. He is my eyes and ears in the field. He has my full authority. If he sees something that isn't right, he can make those corrections immediately. He doesn't need my permission to do so. So in saying that, he has the city's and the residents' best interest at heart. Being a homeowner himself and as well as myself, anytime I do work in a city, I tell my contractors and my employees to treat every resident's home as if it were yours. If you're going to tear up their yard, knock on their door, talk to them, explain to them how things are going to happen, and then when you're done, clean it up. Put it back the way it was. And that's the way I prefer to do business. If I had the opportunity to be in the field all the time, I could spend a little bit more time with the contractors. But unfortunately, I have several projects to work on, but I train my inspectors to do the exact same thing that I do.
Yes, Councilmember Turnus.
Just as a citizen, I personally have been very concerned with what I've seen and heard with the gas line, the water lines breaking, and even though you say it wasn't your fault, the fact is that it still happened. And I personally, in my own experience, just walking the streets of Milton, have come across 2 manhole covers that have been blatantly left open with no trucks being around at all, which is a potential hazard for somebody getting killed or hurt or something. One of them was in front of a school as well. I just feel like Easy Fiber hasn't taken our personal safety into consideration. I know I walk on streets, there's big squares that are cut in the street now, and it's an actual divot in there, and when I'm walking, it creates where it used to be a flat surface, now it's a rough surface, so you really have to be paying attention. And if somebody's not paying attention, it's very easy that they can trip and fall because of the cuts in the road. So I just, as a concerned citizen, and I've heard other people express the same thing, I just feel like Easy Fiber has come in to make money, of course, and as a business owner, I respect that fact. But when you're sacrificing people's health and safety in doing it, I think you've crossed a line, and I just want to know that you guys are taking our safety into consideration in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, and I appreciate that concern. I can assure you that we're not here just to make money. My expectation from my team is that we keep the residents safe, that we meet the city standards. Now, have we had challenges with some of the work that the contractors have done? Yes. We fully own it. It's not the contractor that's on the franchise agreement, it's Easy Fiber, right? So at the end of the day, I, as the senior leader of the market, take full responsibility, and the actions that we're taking to mitigate that is removing the contractor that has had the underperformance, putting together an aggressive restoration schedule this week that will be given to Dustin to make sure that we restore those surfaces that you're referring to. We do a walkout with Val and Dustin to identify what those restoration limits are, so that both Dustin, Val, and us are on the same page as to what needs to be restored and to what limits. Once that is completed, then Troy and the city's team will walk it out again after it's completed, just to make sure that it does meet your standards. And those sites that are left unsafe, I will immediately remove a subcontractor or contractor from a job if that happens again. And I told that to Dustin, and I keep my word. We will remove those people ASAP.
Thank you.
And they have. We've had a situation where they had to remove an individual. They caused a blatant safety hazard.
And if I need to fire an internal employee for the same reason, I will as well. I have zero tolerance for that stuff.
Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you. So you were mentioning that you have a restoration schedule to be provided. Is this restoration schedule to be provided forward-facing to the public by any chance?
No, we basically work with the Public Works team to provide that schedule based on the amount of work that's been completed in the field. So we say, hey, we have, let's say, 2 segments that are upcoming for release. We will provide that schedule this week. Troy will be providing it to Dustin.
Okay. The reason why I ask is to kind of add to what Councilmember Hall was mentioning on 23rd Street, the fact that they covered the sidewalk with a blacktop. So residents there are under the impression that's complete and finalized. So I was wondering if there's a way to inform the general public, like, hey, we're not complete yet with the final restoration, because those are a lot of concerned people out there thinking that.
We'll develop some type of outreach to let residents know when restoration is anticipated in their area.
Okay.
Yep, good idea.
And by the way, after we do the restoration, we do the walkout with Dustin and Val and agree that, yes, this meets our standards. If one of the residents sees something that doesn't look right, please point it out and we'll go out and fix it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Poor.
Thank you, Mayor. Dustin, did you say that these people are the people that have helped the most on like resolving issues?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for doing that, but it feels like every single week we're having citizens come in and talk about how terrible Easy Fiber has been. I appreciate you guys have been helping, and I'm gonna try and be as respectful as I can because of that. But I have a lot of issues with the way you guys have been conducting business. There's been trash left all over the place, I've heard. I've personal safety concerns. There's a pothole that was created because the contractors or subcontractors that you guys hired put a garden lid on the thing, and so it immediately broke like a day or 2 after it was installed, because it's supposed to be a road grade lid because it's right next to the road. So I have a pothole in my yard right next to the road where people walk and anyone could step in it. And I submitted documentation of this, and even the process seemed awful. We had one of your colleagues come and talk about how you guys are trying to do better. I think around a month ago, he gave his phone number and had something people can scan and try and submit issues, right? So I did the scan and I emailed in with the instructions. I even included a photograph. And when I emailed, they told me to call or send it in text. And to me, email is a much better form of documentation and communication than texting or calling. And so I emailed back like, this is ridiculous. What is going on? I just gave you a picture and you're just giving me the runaround. So it's not just me that this is happening to. It's like all of our concerned citizens. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but my wife is on Facebook a lot, and she sees people constantly complaining about Easy Fiber. And I know a lot of this is going to be frustrating for you guys to hear, but it doesn't feel like you guys are doing anything to fix the stuff that you've messed up unless it's a gas main. And that's got to be fixed, right? But are you guys even fixing it? Isn't that PSE that has to come out and fix the mistake? We just had somebody come last week and talk about how there's strikes happening in other cities and basically prophesied this was going to happen. And so, like, if I was an employee that performed as poorly as Easy Fiber has, I would expect to get fired. You know, all this, the safety things should be focused on first before drilling more. Why aren't we fixing any of the issues that are already in place? If you guys are slowing down, you say you're slowing down some stuff, maybe you guys could spend a bunch of money on actually fixing some of the issues that people have problems with already. Reroute some of those funds that we're going to go towards future drilling if you're kind of slowing down, you know what I mean? I don't know of anybody in the city that's happy with Easy Fiber right now. And I understand that you guys hire contractors, but at the end of the day, it's a pattern of behavior. It's not acceptable. And I feel like the city is kind of held hostage by this franchise agreement, and I don't understand why there's no accountability from your guys' side. I know Dustin's trying to do whatever he can do with these stop work orders and stuff, but can you guys speak to the strike and if people were evacuated from homes, businesses, stuff like that for those 4 hours?
I don't know if they'll be able to speak to the evacuation because that was outside of their purview. But I'll let them speak to it.
Yeah, I tried making it up here, but, as you know, all the roads were blocked. But from my understanding, my inspector said that the surrounding homes around the intersection of 23rd and Milton Way, those businesses and residents were evacuated. Once they deemed, the fire department and the PSE deemed that it was safe, they allowed them to come back into their homes. From my understanding, it took about 2.5 hours to cap the gas line and fix that. So it was a major inconvenience, and I do understand that.
Yeah, thank you. So I know for myself, I live on 23rd, and thankfully my family didn't have to be evacuated, but I'm sure there were a lot of people that were negatively affected by that, and that had to have caused fear in their entire family. Is my home going to be here when I come back? I personally told my wife, because I have lost complete faith in Easy Fiber and their ability to rectify things, let's get out of our house and go somewhere to eat until this is fixed. So I can't be the only one when mine wasn't even forcefully evacuated. So I think that, I appreciate that you guys are willing to come back. Maybe you guys should come back every week to hear what our citizens are talking about, because we shouldn't have to be the only ones hearing it when we can't go out there and fix it. It's your guys' company that has to hire those people to actually do this stuff. If the processes aren't even good for us to relay the information for things to be fixed, that's an internal Easy Fiber thing specifically that needs to get fixed. I had to basically complain back to the person to even have them run it up the chain to have it, and mine is a smaller issue. I've heard other people in here talking about how buses are getting blocked, how people who are disabled don't have access to things. And it's just like, I don't understand why you guys can't step up the level of contractors that you hire when it's already been such a bad problem for so long. So I apologize, I don't mean to be like personally attacking you guys, but the company is who the city has lost complete faith in. And so if you guys want to keep those customers that you hired or that wanted your guys' business, you've got to fix this stuff real fast. And you've got to show that you actually care. Because if somebody comes and is getting hurt from this stuff, there's the fear that, like, am I going to get sued? Somebody steps in your guys' pothole up there because nobody gives a crap to come fix it, It's like, we need some assurances.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing those concerns. I really do appreciate that. So as I mentioned previously, I am willing to come back every single month and hear not only your voices, but your constituents' voices as well and their concerns. So I'm not hiding from any of that. I will be here every single month until the issues are addressed. That's number one. Number two, we are dialing back the volume of construction, and we are accelerating restoration to address those issues that you mentioned before with sidewalk panels and certain areas that, if left not completed, could continue to be a safety issue of someone tripping or anything like that. So we are shifting, not necessarily the dollars, because the dollars are always there to do restoration, just the timeline, right? Doing restoration faster and dialing back the construction activities. I have to look at your specific case to see what happened there and how the process broke to ensure that it doesn't happen to anyone else. I do want to take a look at, was your situation fixed or is it still pending?
It's still pending.
Okay, so
I haven't heard anything back.
I would like to
Notified them back in March.
Okay, so I'll personally take a look and make sure that that gets addressed. I'll also take a look at the support mailbox. It's supposed to be support.wa@easyfiber.com. There's also supposed to be a support number that you can call in and place a escalation ticket. But you are right, email, most folks prefer email, and we have a dashboard of open tickets where each contractor that is working in a specific city has their tickets, and we have standard level service agreements that a ticket has a certain amount of time that it needs to be closed within, normally 48 to 72 hours. So I got to take a look at that process, right, just to see where it broke, make sure that it gets fixed moving forward. So I'll take a look at it. You have my word, and I'll make sure that this gets addressed with your situation.
I appreciate it. I mean, I'm just kind of using it as an example. I want like the whole city's issues to be fixed, not,
I want to address the entire city, not just yours, but I'm just addressing this because you brought it up. But yeah, I want to address every single resident is as important.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Thank you guys for coming. We need to move along because we got one item left on the agenda and only 20 minutes to get it done in, so
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Mayor White, thank you for having us, city council members. We appreciate you guys having us. Looking forward to coming back and answering some more questions, hopefully better ones next time.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, the next item on the agenda is item 4C on page 31 of your packet, and it's going to be Public Works Director Madden is going to present it to us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. The item before us tonight will be coming back next week for decision, but it is an ordinance to approve a franchise agreement with both Ziply Fiber and NFC Northwest. NFC Northwest is a subsidiary of Easy Fiber, or not Easy Fiber, that's going to take a minute, Ziply Fiber, and similar to the way AT&T and Forge Fiber differentiate between underground and above ground telecommunication, this is their same split of specialty. In early 2025, Ziply Fiber approached the city to engage in discussions regarding a non-exclusive franchise agreement for the transmission of fiber optic internet services. In June of 2025, the city approved a franchise agreement with Ziply Fiber, but due to a change in personnel at Ziply Fiber, there was miscommunication regarding the final version of the agreement. Accordingly, the agreement was void, and the city entered into a new discussion with Ziply Fiber that resulted in the attached franchise agreement. Additionally, in late 2025, Ziply Fiber underwent some corporate changes, and because of those changes is also asking for a franchise agreement for NFC Northwest. Below is some additional information for Ziply Fiber and the two companies are proposing to deploy in Milton. Ziply Fiber, we do have a representative from Ziply in the audience too. And so he would be happy to answer any questions that council may have. But we'll own and transport fiber line that connects the central point of presence, the POP, in the Milton back to the broader internet. The connection is what brings high-speed internet to the city. This transport line will be in the city's right-of-way. At the POP, Ziply will hand off ownership to NFC, which will own all of the facilities in the city through the public right-of-way. This will connect the internet directly to residents' home, business, and community. Ziply will then maintain and operate the NFC Northwest network. So the primary difference that I have seen with Ziply's approach is they proposed a pole attachment agreement, which indicates that they are looking to string their fiber on our existing pole infrastructure. And so that is a significant, I guess, cost savings, one, and also a significant potential for less impacts to our residents with strikes of water lines, gas lines, sewer, storm, all of the above. So that's a way to mitigate those strikes. For all day-to-day interactions, whether it's construction, coordination, permitting, inspection, traffic control, restoration, that will be Ziply Fiber. NFC won't have a separate field presence in Milton. Instead, Ziply Fiber will be the main point of contact for everything related in the network and the infrastructure. So pursuant to RCW 35A 47.040, the City Council has the authority to grant franchise agreements for the use of its public streets and other right-of-ways. The agreement does not grant Ziply or NFC the authority to commence work within the right-of-way without first obtaining the appropriate permits. As I said, this item will be coming back next Monday. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for discussion, questions, anything that you may have. And if I don't have the answer, perhaps Ziply's representative can be able to speak to it.
Councilmember Mounts.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for clarifying that they're planning on using the existing pole infrastructure, so we don't have to worry about our front yards being dug up again in the right-of-way.
That is what that indicates. As far as how much they'll be leveraging above ground fiber versus below ground, I would need Ziply to speak to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
come on up.
welcome, coming up. Yeah, hot seat. We'll get comfortable.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me this evening. My name is Jared Newen.
Doesn't like anybody new.
My name is Jared Newenhouse. I'm a senior manager for local government relations at Ziply Fiber. And Dustin, thanks for the introduction. A perfect setup. Absolutely correct. Our preference is always to go aerially. So on poles, it's quicker, it's faster, it's less disruption. Yes, of course, sometimes we do need to trench or drill in some areas where they don't have poles, or it's just not feasible to do it. But that is always our first preference is to do that.
Doesn't the city of Milton have a preference to be underground?
With all new infrastructure throughout the city, we have a preference to go underground, although we can make an exception in this case. And that preference really is to prohibit new poles and new infrastructure from being installed. It's not necessarily speaking to attaching to existing poles.
So I know that we have franchise fiber fatigue here in Milton. And we've already authorized the Forge Fiber franchise to be approved. And it was my understanding that at that time, the right-of-way was saturated and we would not have to permit or allow any other franchise agreements. Is the right-of-way saturated, close to saturated?
So Ziply, because they had a previous franchise agreement, they were considered in that saturation as far as how many people had a franchise agreement within the city. But as you spoke to, our code, section 12.05.080, it's the determination by the city. Do we want to allow another franchise agreement to enter? So within the time period established by state and federal law, after receiving a complete application, which we have, the city council shall grant or deny a franchise application. If the city council denies a franchise, such denial must be based on one of the following: the financial and technical ability of the applicant, the legal ability of the applicant to provide the telecommunications service, the capacity of the right-of-way to accommodate the applicant's facility, the capacity of the right-of-way to accommodate additional facilities if the application is granted, the damage or disruption, if any, of the public or private facility improvement service, travel, or landscaping, giving consideration to the applicant's willingness and ability to mitigate or repair. So basically, if they're not going to restore or if they don't restore. Public interest in minimizing the cost and disruption of construction with the right-of-way. The service that the applicant will provide to the region, the effect, if any, on the general public health, safety, welfare of the city's sole opinion, if the application is granted. So that is from our code. And that is something that council will need to, weigh and consider. And as far as capacity, are we at the limit? As stated, Ziply having the ability to work within the right-of-way was considered in that full saturation statement. But if council would like to pause, I think that is up to them to do a study on that. What I've seen is there's always more room in the right-of-way, and they can make a case against that. Now, whether it's an easy path of least resistance, probably not. It could be a hillside, but there is, potentially room in the right-of-way, they could argue. And so we would need to speak with council if we would need to speak with legal if council felt strongly about saturation of right-of-way. Yep.
Councilmember Poor.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you compare your company's competency, prices, and performance in relation to other companies like Easy Fiber or Forged Fiber?
I can really only speak to Ziply Fiber. Every company's a little bit different. What I can tell you is that we're a local homegrown company. Our headquarters up in Kirkland, Everett area. We have, very fast-growing company, but we're really focused on Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. That's our footprint. So we're your neighbors. We want to provide not only the best and the fastest fiber internet service, but we want to do it at the best possible price as well. There's no contracts. The fees are some of the lowest in the industry. And we want to keep it that way because we believe that a community that is connected online for school, for health, for work, however they need that internet access for, the better we are as a community. And we want to be that very strong community partner as well, not just in Milton, but any city that we're operating in. So that is always one of our highest priorities at all time.
What are your prices?
As low as $20 a month.
Okay. And do you have a lot of history of having construction issues?
I think construction issues do pop up from time to time. It's always different, different reasons. I think anyone who's in this business is going to have, construction can be messy sometimes, as I'm sure Jessica could tell you. So, but we take every possible, to the nth degree in terms of ensuring that we're always safe. We always do what we say. And that's really important too, is the communication piece. We reach out to ahead of time, well before we even get there. We put out door hangers or knock on their door and tell them exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how they may or may not be impacted. And then also communicate very strongly with everybody about the restoration process. Because the last thing we want is anyone guessing of, is this done? Is it fully done? Is it fully restored? When are you coming back? We never want them to have that conversation either, amongst themselves or their greater community. And we always want to ensure that restoration is done at or better than the way we found it. That's a core company value.
And are your internet speeds just as fast as the other ones?
Just as fast.
Okay.
Although I would have to compare because I don't spend a lot of time looking at all the different competitors, but we pride ourselves on having some of the fastest internet speeds.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions.
Yes, Councilmember Turnus.
Hello. I was just wondering, you said you're a new company. How old is your company?
Ziply Fiber's been around for about 7, 8 years now.
Okay, and how many cities in Washington are they in already?
Oh my gosh, pretty much everywhere. Spokane Valley, as small as like Liberty Lake and Granger, Tacoma, Kirkland, all throughout King County, Pierce, and Snohomish County. So we're going very quickly. And then it's not just Washington State; it's Idaho and Montana, and those Oregon.
And then just for educational purposes, what is the difference between having the lines up and having the lines underground?
The biggest difference is that you can move quickly. It doesn't take as long, right? Because if you're drilling underground, that really slows you down. It takes a while as well. So it's faster, and then it's just quick and easy to get out of there. And you can lay a lot of fiber really quickly when you're attaching it to poles. That's really the biggest difference, and it's less impact really to the community as well.
Yeah.
There's no speed difference?
No, there's no speed or quality of the internet. No, there's no difference there.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Hall.
I personally work from home, and so does my daughter. We were out of internet. I know Councilmember Cedar was too, for 2 days. What is your repair rate? How fast are you going to be here when we have a storm? That's where underground, I know underground's a pain to do, but what's your response time?
Well, I'd have to come back and give you our overall response times, because every situation's a little bit different. Like if we had another bomb cyclone, for example, that we had, what was that, last winter or 2 winters ago? I mean, that's almost like a catastrophic event, right? So that takes a while to repair everything. But we are out there very, very quickly with crews, regardless if it's aerial or underground. We're out there fixing it as quickly as possible, because if you're not connected, you're not connected to your job, to your doctor, to your family, community. So goal number one is to get you reconnected as quickly as possible. And most of the time that can be quite quick once we get there, like it's safe to be there, and then like resplice the fiber and then get you reconnected as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Councilmember Roberts?
I had a question about the construction process. So you're going to be hanging the majority from poles and whatnot, and you said there'd be the possibility of underground. So can you use existing infrastructure for the underground portion? For example, the Easy Fiber?
It is possible in some cases, but I'd have to look at the engineering plans and exactly what the build looks like for the city of Milton, and see exactly what percentage, is committed to aerial versus underground, and if there is any possibility, or we're even looking at a leasing opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess you don't know without actually looking, because the reason why I asked that question is the encroachment on people's properties and things like that, which have been a major concern in the community. So, yeah, I just, one of many concerns. So I wanted to understand potential for that encroachment on people's property. And it sounds like with the pole portion, that's not a huge issue, but if you had to go underground, there is that possibility. So I just wanted to understand that better.
Yeah, no, there is that possibility, of course, but we always follow the city's protocols and what the permit allows for us to do, or the right-of-way allows us to do. And then again, just taking every possible precaution by starting with great communication, maintaining that communication, and then restoring whatever we may have, disrupted during that construction process, and ensuring it's back to as good or better all the time. Because, that's a lost customer for us, right? If they're not happy with the work that we did, and we never want that to happen. And certainly, we want to have a great reputation and a great partnership with the city. So that's always goal number one. Thank you. Thank you.
And I will speak just to the lease opportunity. I've asked that question of Easy, because we knew that additional fiber companies were going to be coming in, and the answer was no. They don't currently allow people to share conduit as infrastructure. Now, that said, our approach would be we would show all of the hubs, all of the handholds, all of the places where the fiber comes up out of the ground. We would try to locate those with either Forge or NFC Ziply in a similar location, so people don't have boxes spread out all over their right-of-way. We want to try to group them. So,
Any additional questions? Councilmember Cedar?
I guess just to make sure I comment on this as well. I appreciate you being here, so I'm not directing this at you. I think our community's quite fed up with the fiber situation. However, I would just note from an internet user standpoint, this is really actually very exciting. A lot of communities don't have the opportunity to get fiber, let alone consistent, good internet, and we're about to have at least one, potentially two, potentially three options. And for a community that I have heard nothing but complaints about our lack of internet access options over the years. I've had complaints for it. So I'm excited as an end user. I would just give a word of caution that you're obviously coming into a community that's not excited to see another install. So, I think there's a short patience for it. And I think that we would be doing ourselves a disservice by not allowing it, and just make sure we're communicating with the residents about what we're doing. I also would note, we would give Easy Fiber a monopoly were we to not allow other franchises, which I don't think anyone would support at this point. So I'll support this, but very much keeping our eyes on it.
Can I speak to that?
sure.
No, I appreciate your comment, and I think competition's better. Competition leads to a better product, better service, and better pricing. And I appreciate that we might not be coming into the market the best possible time, but we also believe that, we've got a great company, of great values, and again, being a part of that community is really important to us, and we always want to make sure that we're doing everything by the book as dictated by the city, and we believe that the city would love that, and the residents would love that other option, as you mentioned, just because for too often, there's only been one player in the market, and that hasn't always been a great, a great experience for them. So to offer that, we really appreciate the opportunity to do that. So thank you for your comments.
All right, great. We're going to make it just under the wire.
Thank you.
Seeing that all agenda items have been concluded. Oh, wait. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just,
Have 2
do you mind if I just say a quick thank you to Chief Hernandez? Just wanted to say thank you, guys. Thank you to the police department for responding when that strike happened. You guys were out there on the streets, keeping people from going down those roads. And if something had exploded, then you guys could have gotten hurt. So, and I know that my son was comforted by you guys. So thank you for that. Anyway, thank you, Mayor. Sorry.
Thanks. Okay. Seeing as all agenda items have been concluded, I adjourn this meeting at 7:59 PM.